Hello and welcome to Just Films and That, the podcast that celebrates films we think are underrated, underappreciated, underseen, or we just really, really wanted to talk about them. I'm your host for this week, Alice Oliver. With me, as always, is Josh Hallam. Say hello, Josh.
Hello, Josh.
Oh, very funny. He's such a comedian, guys.
No one's ever done that before.
Ever in the history of comedy. So, Josh picked this week's film. It's I Give It a Year from the year 2013. So let's get to it. So, Josh, as I said, you picked this week's film, I Give It a Year from 2013. So, spoiler warning, listeners, if you haven't seen it. Josh, what is this film about and why did you pick it?
Okay, so what's it about? Essentially, there is a couple. It starts with them meeting, then a quick flash through of their relationship, right through to them then getting married 9 months later after meeting, or not less than a year after meeting. Then it charts
7 months, I believe.
7 months, not 9 months. Sorry. And then the film is essentially charts the downfall of their marriage and relationship. So what it is, I think, what the concept behind it is it is a rom-com in reverse. It starts with the characters meeting and then falling out of love rather than falling in love. I picked this, first of all, because I think that's a really interesting concept to talk about. Secondly, I think it is underseen and underrated. I don't know many people who have seen this in terms of talking about it with friends and stuff. I've looked at the not the social media, I've looked at the critical receptions rather, and I do think it's a little bit underrated. I remember watching this when it was first released on streaming, I think, and I remember thinking it's a little bit more mature, it's less sappy, it's almost like a rom-com for adults. You know, when we talked about Just My Luck and we said it's almost like a rom-com that doesn't know its audience, and I think
straddling the two.
I think this is the other end. I think it does know its audience, and I think its audience is adults, and I think it's a really decent film. It's not perfect, but I think it's a decent romantic comedy with a bit of a twist. So, had you seen it before?
So I hadn't seen this. Don't really know if I'd heard of it, but again, it felt like almost one of those kind of generic titles that I thought I'd heard of, but maybe not, like Just Married, like Friends with Benefits, these sort of things that you get with a lot of these rom-coms. So I hadn't seen it.
No strings attached.
Exactly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll be honest. So I watched this film and I really didn't like it. I was like, I don't. No, Josh, wait. I watched it and I really didn't like it.
And it was wrong film, so I watched the right film.
Turns out it was Jaws 2, everybody. But then I got to the end and realised that I'd been watching it all wrong. So obviously you get to the end and they get divorced.
Yes.
And then the penny dropped and I was like, oh, this isn't about their relationship. It's about the other relationship. And once I'd realised that, I thought, right, I need to watch this again because I've watched it wrong. And therefore I have
you watched it again.
I watched it again. I had to watch it twice because I knew that my judgments, my preconceived ideas about it would have been wrong. And I would have come into this not appreciating the full picture. But then ultimately, after the second watch, I thought it was okay. Didn't love it.
Yeah.
Didn't think it was amazing. Yeah. But knowing what I knew about it being this reverse kind of rom-com, about the concept being something a little bit different, it made it more enjoyable and it made the moments, some of the moments a bit more poignant, some of the moments stand out a little bit more, and some of the comedy even a little bit better too. So what are some of your favourite things about this, Josh? Let's jump straight into the likes. What do you like about this film?
Okay, so like you said there, it's not perfect, but I think it's funny. I think it's quite relatable in some of its humour. I think it's got a great cast. I mean, you've got Rafe Spall, Rose Byrne, Anna Faris, Stephen Merchant, Minnie Driver, Jason Fleming, Olivia Colman, pre-Oscar. Really, really good cast. A who's who of really good British talent in there, because you've also got Tim Key, you've also got Daisy Haggard. There's loads of other people people who aren't even coming to mind, but there's loads of really, really good actors, comedy actors in this. I think it's a really interesting exploration around the idea of flawed characters. Everyone in this is not, it is not a rom-com, you know, everyone in it is not a young hotshot working in a media company or a law firm or a magazine or something like that, and they're just trying to get that next promote. It's not that cliche. They have decent jobs, but you are shown them as flawed characters. So I think it's a little bit more relatable. And it's also an exploration of an idea that it's okay if you're not right for one another. Now, we're both lucky. We're both in, as far as I know, happy relationships. But there is that really interesting idea in this. It's okay to look at each other and go, like they do at the end, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, and we shouldn't be together. And I think that's a really interesting idea. Like I said, it's a subversion in the way it's a rom-com. It is it's not an anti-rom-com. It is a reverse rom-com. It is about having to, go through a couple before you meet the right one, that sort of thing. It's not Cupid's arrow hits you and then that's it. There is only one person. As we've mentioned on that podcast before, I think we're both like we did in Enduring Love, we both subscribe to that idea that yes, love is a brilliant thing, but there isn't one person for everybody, because that just defies logic. So yeah, I think there's some really good ideas in there. As I said earlier, I'm waffling a little bit now, but I think it's really funny as well in places. The opening is really funny, and it's such a simple joke. A priest is trying to announce the man and wife and gets a coughing fit.
Yeah.
I think there's stuff like that. It's funny. And again, really great cast, really great idea. So, you've already said there, you watched it the first time, you didn't really like it until you clicked a little bit at the end. Then you rewatched it and you thought it was okay. So what did you like about it? What made it okay?
So I do like the concept. I like that you've got a couple of these, early 30s people who are kind of panicking. It seems like it's like, oh shit, I'm 31, 32 and I'm not married and I haven't got kids. Oh, I better marry this guy that I've known for 7 months, that sort of thing. The interesting thing as well is they say they've been together because Josh says in his groom's speech, sorry, he's not the groomsman at his own wedding, Alice, he's the groom, that they've been together for 7 months. And then it's like, well, hang on, how fast did you plan this wedding? Like, did you throw this together in a couple of weeks? Because it's quite a nice wedding. So I do like the concept. Yeah, like you say, it's relatable. It's kind of for us, isn't it? We are the age bracket that this film is designed for, that kind of early 30s, just as you're settling down.
It's not as nice as your wedding, Alice.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I went to your wedding because we're friends outside of this podcast, everybody. We're actually friends outside of this podcast. So, just
I know. Hard to believe, guys.
I went to Alice's wedding. It was really nice from what I remember. Anyway, yes, as you were saying, they get that wedding together quickly.
Yeah, and so I do just enjoy the concept. And like you say, it's about these flawed characters. It's about realizing that, you just aren't perfect for each other. And both Nat and Josh, they're quite stubborn, aren't they? They're like, I'm not going to be the one to throw in the towel for this relationship. They're both still trying, but they're really grating on each other. They don't gel. One of Josh's points in his speech at the wedding is he starts listing off all the ways that they're different and tries to dress it up as being like we're like yin and yang, like we just complement each other because she's this way and I'm that way. But really, they're just not compatible at all. It's like, that's not a romantic thing. You just have very different personalities and you don't gel. You touched on there that it is quite funny. I thought it was quite funny. It wasn't hilarious, but there was the odd moment that I thought was hilarious. So one of the things that Josh doesn't like about Nat is that she sings the wrong words to songs. So for Sweet Dreams by Annie Lennox, all of the Eurythmics, she says, I traveled the world in generic jeans. That floored me. I thought that was hilarious. The other one was, we built this city on rock and roll, but she sings, we built this city on the wrong damn road. I just thought it was hilarious. Really simple jokes like that. There's a moment where I think they're at one of their parents' houses and they're exchanging Christmas gifts, and it's a digital photo frame. So then they put in their USB of all the photos from their beautiful...
That dates it as well, a digital photo frame.
I know, Yeah, right. So they had this beautiful honeymoon in Morocco. So they start, looking at all the pictures, and it's beautiful scenery and food and restaurants. And then suddenly there's some very graphic images of them doing sex acts to one another. That's quite funny. And there's a scene where they're playing charades again at Christmas. And so they've got, so clear this up for me, actually. So they've got a couple, friend couple that they hang out with quite a lot. A man and a woman. Is that Nat's sister? Is he her
Mini
brother?
Mini Driver's character?
What's the connection there?
So I think that Minnie Driver and Rose Byrne's characters are meant to be sisters.
Okay.
I'm only basing that off the way they talk to each other and the fact that they're both very dark haired and maybe could be sisters, I guess, if you actually looked at them. But yeah, so I think and I love Minnie Driver's character in this, like the way that her and her husband just hate each other, but then the way they explain how they make it work, I think is quite sweet, but also quite funny as well at the same time. Yeah, so anyway, they're playing charades at her parents' quite conservative house, isn't it?
Yeah. And this is what made me think that they must be sisters as well, because Minnie Driver's character and her husband are there. It's like, why would you be at her parents' house at Christmas time otherwise? So they're playing charades, and one of the words that Josh is trying to get them to guess is just man. So he's pointing at Minnie Driver's husband just for the word man. But Minnie Driver's character starts saying things like pathetic, useless, wimp, lazy, like all these really derogatory things. And then similarly, when it's the other way around and he's trying to get them to guess the word woman, he points at Rose Byrne's character, so Nat, and then Minnie Driver's husband's like beautiful, hot, sexy, amazing, cute, and all these things. And those moments I thought were quite funny, and that did make me laugh, because it's a lot of awkwardness, isn't it, in this film? A lot of awkward humour that I quite enjoyed. Stephen Merchant I thought was really good. He plays this really awful, creepy, just makes you so socially uncomfortable.
Inept.
He's so bad. He's just so inappropriate. He is friends with Josh, isn't he? So he's our protagonist, one of his best friends, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, Rafe Spall, yeah.
And he's just such a creep, and he does that so well. I really like Stephen Merchant. I enjoy seeing him. And I did really like the end. So you've got this sort of build-up. You don't really know where it's going, right? So Josh and Nat, they're trying to make it work. They're going to therapy. She does, dresses up as an estate agent for him and stuff. And, he's trying to be all sexy. And he goes out to try and buy a lingerie and all this. But at the end, it eventually builds up and builds up. And the climax is that Josh runs in, and to her, she's having a meal at a restaurant, isn't she? And I think they're waiting for him or something. It's their 1 year anniversary. That's it. And he runs into the restaurant and he just goes, Nat, will you do me the honor of divorcing me? Or something like that. And she's like, yes, I will. Yes, 1,000 times yes. And you feel the relief. You feel the relief with them. And that's kind of a really touching moment, because it's finally, you've both stopped playing this stupid game of relationship chicken and you're just admitting it doesn't work. We've made a mistake. Obviously, Josh wants to be with Anna Faris's character, whose name I can't remember. What's Anna Faris's character called?
Chloe.
Yes, Chloe. So he obviously wants to be with her. They work together. They've got so much in common. They knew each other before. They were going out before. She laughs at his stupid jokes, And then Nat Rose Byrne wants to be with this, suave business guy from America who's, wealthy and successful and charming, but not snobby in any way, and, really successful and driven and all this kind of thing. And it's just nice at the end that it's a happy ending, but just not in the way that you thought it was going to be. I just thought that was really
not in the traditional sense. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll move on then to talking about anything that we didn't like about the film, or anything that we would perhaps change. So what about you, Josh? What are your thoughts on this one?
A couple of things. The first thing is Simon Baker's character Guy, who is the charming American guy that you mentioned there.
Guy is the guy.
Guy's the guy.
Guy's the guy.
His character is a little one note, so you get quite a nice exploration of Josh, of Nat, and of Chloe. So Anna Faris and Rafe Spall and Rose Byrne's characters, but you don't really get much of him. He's just a sexy, charming businessman. And I think the point there is him and Rose Byrne sort of look like what you might consider the traditional leads in a rom-com to be. Ridiculously good looking, who two people who've just found each other, who've, never actually met anyone for somehow they've never met other people or whatever. I thought his character was a little bit one note. It didn't really flesh it out enough for me. I think the main issue, is I think we needed a little bit more to demonstrate that they're not right for each other, because they've not been together that long, so they could just be going through a bad time. And what they do is they take things that might irritate you in a couple, like someone not feel, she's annoyed at him because he doesn't take the bin out, and he's annoyed at her because she gets the song lyrics right. And it's like, yeah, that's irritating stuff, but maybe not stuff to get divorced over. But then I guess the point is that stuff irritates them because they're not right for each other.
Exactly.
But I do still think we could have done with a little bit more around them not being right for each other. And I think the main problem is we don't see enough of them on their own together. A lot of this is them with the supporting cast, which is great because all the supporting cast and all the cast in this are great. But there's not enough of them together for us to see them, A, really happy, or B, really irritated. There's just a couple of bits of, this is annoying.
And even when they go to therapy together, you don't actually really get that much from them, don't you? Because a lot of the focus is, like you said about the supporting cast, is about Olivia Colman, isn't it? And it's about her moments of comedy and the humour that she's bringing to it. Because I was expecting...
Which is amazing.
Of course she is. She's brilliant in everything. I knew Olivia Colman was destined for great things when I see her in Peep Show, because Sophie is one of the most annoying people in the world, and she absolutely nails it. So you're quite distracted in some of those moments where you'd think you're getting to know them as a couple, but then you are distracted by the other things that are going on.
Yes, and I think the other thing is that they seem to not want to be together because they both love someone else. As opposed to them not being right for each other. So I think we could have done with, even if it was just another 10 minutes or so of why aren't they right for each other. It's okay to be right for other people, but we've got to show that they're not right for one another. And I know there's a lot in there interwoven about them rushing things and the little things that annoy each other, but maybe just a little bit more color on the page in that sense. What about you anyway? So you've said it's only okay. So what were the things that made it only okay?
Well, as I have said, obviously I had to watch it twice to really get it and to really appreciate what it was trying to do and to understand what the film was trying to do. And that's not really what you want, I don't think, when you're making a film and when you're putting a film out, is for people to have to watch it twice just to be able to like it. Different if you're watching it twice because you're obsessed with it. I've seen The Matrix 50 bazillion times, and that's fine and that's normal and whatever, Josh, don't quietly judge me, please. So
I've said it that many times as well.
So the fact that I had to is obviously a bit of an issue, isn't it? But I wanted to do it. I wanted to watch it and make sure that I got it because I needed to come into this knowing the full picture. And I am glad that I did. And I did get something more out of it that second time. It kind of blurs the lines between exactly what it wants to be a little bit. And then it's kind of unclear because you're not sure really if you're rooting for the main couple. If you are meant to be rooting for Nat and Josh, because at times you feel like you are. Like I said before, sometimes she'll make the effort and she'll dress up as a sexy estate agent and he gets a massive boner and it's like, oh, are things going well? They clearly fancy each other or whatever. But then he'll have these moments with Anna Faris's character, so with Chloe, and you're like, oh no, these two are meant to be together. And then, so you kind of start thinking, is this guy just a douchebag? Like, are these both just terrible people who got married but are now openly flirting and trying to get it on with other people? So you're kind of a bit like, who am I following? Who do I believe in? Who am I siding with in this, I think?
Do you think another issue as well is that, so Rose Byrne and Simon Baker have really great chemistry. Anna Faris and Rafe Spall have really great chemistry. But I think Rose Byrne and Rafe Spall also have really good chemistry. So maybe they should have cast people or done something to, make sure that they didn't have chemistry.
Maybe that's a challenge.
And that could be one. But they definitely do, because and there are things in the script about them being happy. They're not completely miserable. So I think maybe there's an element of that, and I understand what you mean with what are they trying to do.
And so something that did confuse me a little bit as well. So Anna Faris's character, why is she at the wedding? Why is his ex-girlfriend at the wedding? Found that a bit odd. Can you explain that for me, Josh? I know they're co-workers. But
no, well, they're not co-workers. He's a writer and she works for a charity.
Oh,
he's just there at one day.
Why
unless he's, I think, or maybe she works at his publishers
you're right.
or something. But
you're right. Yeah, I got confused because he goes to her office, doesn't he? At one point.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think why is she at the wedding? I think I suppose they're supposed to just still be mates, but then Stephen Merchant's character, or one of the characters, reveals that they've never actually broken up. She just went to Africa to do some charity work. And then they clearly still want to be with each other. So maybe it's that whole thing of he invited her because she's a mate, but, he couldn't let go or something.
Yeah, so I thought that was a bit odd. And then he invites her again to quite an intimate dinner party between, a few of the closer friends, the sister and Stephen Merchant as well. And I thought that was a bit strange. So I didn't love any of the characters. I didn't fall in love with anyone in particular. And I know I sort of touched on it there a little bit. I wasn't firmly rooted in anyone's corner. And so I think I've said before to you as well with other films, like I need to have someone that I'm empathizing with, someone that I'm following, someone who I'm rooting for to kind of really get into the film. And ultimately, it just wasn't quite funny enough for me. There were brilliant moments in there. There was some real gold in there. That we built this city on the wrong damn road, Josh. I can't tell you. That's how I sing it now. I was singing it the other day and Ollie was like, those aren't the words. And I was like, oh, I know, babe. You wouldn't get it, sort of thing. But I genuinely find shit like that funny, right? But I just thought, in general, it wasn't quite funny enough and then also wasn't quite romantic enough. So I kind of didn't know how to process it all. Do you know what I mean?
So do you think maybe for you there's a concept there, a really good concept, but it could have just done with a little bit more something to it?
I think so. And I wonder if it is, like you said, if it's about getting to know Nat and Josh maybe a bit more as a couple and having a few more scenes, a bit more relationship development, a bit more character development between those two.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because although this is a very, it's a solid, tight hour and a half film, this is the sort of concept you could get a TV series out of.
Definitely.
If you wanted to.
Point.
And so maybe that's it, if you'd have had a bit more time with the characters, maybe you would have loved them a bit more. But I do know what you mean. But ultimately, there's more to like than there isn't for me. Okay, so we will move on to talking about the critical reception then in a minute. Because, Alice, you're going to take us down the rabbit hole. I'm not going to give you a year. I'm going to give you however long the rabbit hole takes. Take it away.
Oh, well, I'll try and be as quick as possible, Josh and listeners. But yes, we are going to venture down the rabbit hole for this bit that I like to call Alice Down the Rabbit Hole. So, one thing I did like about I Give It a Year is that it was a real who's who of great British talent, and this includes Nat's colleague Helen, played by Daisy Haggard. Daisy was born in the 70s in London, and it would appear as though she was destined for creative greatness. Her mum is a stained glass artist, her dad, Piers Haggard, is a British theatre, film and TV director, and his dad, Stephen Haggard, was a stage actor, and Stephen's great-uncle was an author of adventure fiction romance set in exotic locations. Quite the family tree indeed. Daisy's dad, however, didn't want to encourage any of his 6 children to follow in his footsteps and enter the world of showbiz, saying that acting is a hard, horrible life, but she found she just couldn't help herself, entertaining her family with self-written work at an early age, including The Mystery of the Scratched Boob. It's likely you'll recognise Daisy, as she seems to have been all across British television over the years, including in 2 of my favourites, Peep Show and Green Wing. But it's not just comedy she's known for, as her varied career has seen her perform across the spectrum, from laugh-out-loud sitcoms to more serious roles on the stage. One of the most iconic things about Daisy is her face and her incredible range of facial expressions. And she remarked during an interview back in 2015 that if she had Botox, her whole career would end. It's all dependent on this very wiggly face. And that was Alice Down the Rabbit Hole.
There we go. I think Daisy has a sitcom called Back to Life, which is on iPlayer. It is well worth checking out. I think we might have done a shout out for it on the social media for TV Tuesday, but do watch it because it's brilliant. It's a really, really good sitcom, and I think it's a little bit underseen as well, so fits with the brand.
There you go. Definitely worth a watch.
Okay, so let's talk about the critical reception.
Let's indeed.
You think this is all right?
It's all right.
What would you give it? How do you think it did?
So I wonder if it did better than I maybe would give it because of the cast. Like I said, and like you even said at the beginning, almost word for word for what I said in the rabbit hole there, Josh, we're so in sync. It's a real who's who of British talent. Like there's so many great, and American as well, of course.
And Australian as well.
And Australian. Yes, indeed. So, we've got all sorts in there. So I wonder if that sort of played quite well with the critics. I really like Rose Byrne. I think she's great. And, all of them did a pretty good job, to be honest. I do really like the concept, though it did just, it fell flat in some areas for me. So I wonder if it got a 6. I wonder if it managed to hold itself at a 6.
A 6.
Maybe I'll say 5.9, I think.
And that's what you'd give it or what you think it got?
I think maybe both.
Right, okay.
I think.
Okay.
Go on.
Well,
go on, Josh.
So, at the time of recording, let's start with the more generous one.
Mm-hmm.
IMDb gives it 5.7 out of 10.
And that's
which
the
isn't
more
too far.
generous one.
Yeah, not too far off what you're saying. On Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it 51%.
Ooh, okay.
And the audience give it 38%. Now,
wow.
I said at the beginning I'd taken a look at the critical reception. Now, for me, I like this film.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good concept and all the other reasons that I've said. I think that's underrated. I think that's harsh. I think there may be issues with it, but there's things to like and it is not that bad.
So it's interesting because obviously with the audience coming out with a score like that, if I'd only watched it once, that might have been what I gave it. Like
the 38.
That might have been where I was sort of at. And you did have to have the rewatch to kind of fully understand what it was trying to achieve, I thought. Interesting. So
that's an average of 48%.
That's quite bad, isn't it?
It's not over 50% bad.
Yeah, I think you've got a point there. And actually, you know what? It's given me one of my favourite jokes of 2022 so far, which is just
sing it again? Do you want to sing it again?
We built this city on the wrong damn road. I travel the world in generic jeans. I think she did one more as well, but those were the two that really stood out.
Underrated then?
You know what, Josh? I didn't think this was going to be the case, but I think it is underrated. I think there's a couple of real good comedic moments in there, and I think it does work for our age bracket.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get a lot of stuff that does. Like a lot of stuff is either for the younger generations or for, kind of like dad films, like these big action sort of blockbustery type things. So go on. Off you go in the underrated pile.
Yes,
I'd give it a year. I'll let it happen.
In you go. Off you pop. Off you pop. I give it a year into the old underrated and underseen vault. Okay, so there we go. Another one, thankfully, sliding on into the underrated. I could have
broken his heart, ladies and gentlemen, but I chose not to.
I think it's worth a watch. So if you like any of the other choices I've made, then give it a watch. If you'd like to suggest a film or get in touch with us, the address is filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of them. It's just Films and That wherever you're looking. So yeah, get in touch, give us a follow, and if you get a chance, give us a little rating on wherever you get your podcast. It is always appreciated because it helps other people hear us talk about I Give It a Year.
We're also on the television every Friday night. We're across the local TV network, so if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool, or the northeast of England, we're on Channel 7 on Freeview, or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, we're on Channel 8 on Freeview. We're also on Sky on Channel 195 across England, so there's no excuse. You can watch us wherever you are. So that's every Friday evening from 6 p.m. and sometimes on Mondays as well.
Yes, there you go. So there's plenty of places to catch us, but please keep listening. And yeah, we will see you next week. Until then, it's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.